Taiwan Army fired missiles at its frontline island of Pengsu.
But they are firing at mock enemy forces that were making a simulated beach landing amid the tensions in the Taiwan Strait. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. And now for the headlines.
Florida leaves more than 3 million pesos damage to agri-sector in Ilocos Norte as government continues to assess damages to other northern Luzon regions. 6 customs officials relieved for alleged involvement in sugar smuggling. 52 killed as floods destroy thousands of homes in Sudan. 3 civilians are killed after Ukrainian forces launched devastating shelling at Donetsk. And Thailand's court suspends Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha from office.
Severe tropical storm Florita has exited the Philippine Area of Responsibility or PAR. But Pag-asa said a gale warning remains in effect over the northern and central Luzon seaboards due to the influence of Florita and the prevailing southwest monsoon. The southwest monsoon may also continue to bring rains over the western section of Luzon in the next 24 hours. Despite lifting of wind signals, Pag-asa said gusts reaching a strong breeze to near gale force strength may also still be experienced, especially in the coastal and mountainous areas over Mimaropa, Cavite, Quezon, Metro Manila, Bulacan, Pampanga, Pangasinan, Aurora, Ilocos Region, Cordillera Administrative Region, and Cagayan Valley. Florita is so far estimated at 490 kilometers west of Calayan, Cagayan, outside PAR. It is forecast to move generally west-northwestward over the West Philippine Sea toward the southern portion of China, where it is expected to make landfall tomorrow morning or early afternoon.
The Department of Agriculture reported that Florita caused an initial 3.01 million peso damage to agriculture in Ilocos Norte. According to the DA, at least 628 hectares of agricultural lands were affected by the flooding in the province. Based on DA's initial assessment, damage and losses have been reported in Ilocos Norte, amounting to 3.01 million, affecting 310 farmers, with volume of production loss at 220 metric tons. The commodities include rice and high-value crops, adding that the cost of damage to the crops is expected to increase. The DA, through its regional field offices, is conducting an assessment of damage and losses brought by Florita in the agri-fisheries sector. Meanwhile, Florita's number of injuries, damages, and casualties left to the Philippines are still being validated. According to the NDRRMC spokesperson Mark Timbal, counterparts of Region 2 have been affected by the flying debris during the storm, and 3 people were primarily counted as injured. Timbal also added 2 possible fatalities in a vehicular accident that happened in Isabela. Additional 30 flooding incidents from regions 1, 2, and 5 were primarily reported. 20 of those have been fully subsided, 4 recently subsided, and 6 active flooding situations were caused by the storm. Moreover, landslides from regions 1 and 5 were primarily reported with no casualties, but have blocked its roadways. From the advance information, 7 bridges and 7 roads are not passable, but clearing operations are now ongoing. Timbal said their disaster managers and assessors for agricultural, infrastructural, and housing damage are already on the ground to conduct this assessment.
6 officials of the Bureau of Customs have been relieved pending investigation of the alleged sugar smuggling at the port of Subic. Madeline Villar Moratillo has the details.
6 officials from the Bureau of Customs were relieved from their post over alleged involvement in the smuggling of sugar in the Port of Subic. Those relieved include Port of Subic District Collector Marites Martin, Deputy Collector for Assessment Maita Acevedo, Deputy Collector for Operations Giovanni Ferdinand Lanes, Assessment Division Head Belinda Lim, Enforcement Security Service Commander Vincent Mark Malasmas, and Customs Intelligence and Investigation Service Supervisor Justice Roman Jelly. Customs Commissioner Yogi Filemon Ruiz said the 6 would temporarily be transferred under the Office of the Commissioner, pending investigation on the alleged smuggling of sugar. The Customs Chief refuses to give more details. Attorney Willie Sarmiento, Law Division Chief of the Port of Subic, will be the officer in charge. At a briefing in Malacanang, Press Secretary Trixie Cruz Angeles said the officials would be subject to administrative proceedings if there is a sufficient evidence to do so.
There are other activities pertaining to the exercise of visitorial powers, yes. Na if there is sufficient evidence, kunwari nakikita natin na may basihan para sa investigasyon, iimbestigahan sila. And pagka sufficient na yung ebidensya, reasonable na yung amount ng ebidensya, then subject to administrative proceedings na sila. Ang pinakamatinding penalty sa administrative case, alam naman po natin, ay dismissal from office, pero without prejudice to criminal charges.
The relief of customs officials is related to the August 18 attempt of the Port of Subic to smuggle some 140,000 bags of imported sugar from Thailand, which is equivalent to 7,000 metric tons. Initial probe by the BOC Customs Intelligence and Investigation Service, or CIIS, showed that the imported sugar used a recycled permit and is consignee to Oro Agri-Trade Incorporated under the account of ARC Refreshments Corporation. Madeline Villar Moratillo reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Resigned Sugar Regulatory Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica may face criminal and administrative charges as the investigation continue on the controversial Sugar Order Number 4. Man Corvera has the details.
Resigned Sugar Regulatory Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica may face administrative and criminal charges in his role in the issuance of the unauthorized sugar order to import 300,000 metric tons of sugar. In the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing on the controversy, Serafica admitted that he drafted the Sugar Order Number 4 without consulting the SRA board. Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri questioned the agency's move despite earlier issuance of a TRO against importation by 2 courts in Negros.
They bypassed the TRO. They proceeded with the importation. Matigas ang ulo. And hindi nila pinansin yun, tinuloy po nila ang importation. Kaya notorious na po ang administration ng SRA at the time for this type of activities. Kaya nung nangyari pumulihan, talagang sabi namin, mag-resign na po sila. Kasi huling-huli na at it was classified as illegal by Malacanang.
Zubiri said the hearing showed Serafica favored the importation and has a criminal intent to hide SO Number 4. The Senate President added that they have received many complaints against SRA from stakeholders.
We're looking at certain violations of law under the Grafted Crop Practices Act, Anti-Smuggling, Anti-Hoarding Act, Agricultural Smuggling and Hoarding Act, violations of the SIDA law, kasi meron din pong violations ginawa nila doon. For example, yung pag-shortcut itong process, are there violations to the Grafted Crop Practices Act when apparently under the rules and practice, this should be thoroughly vetted out with the staff and management, particularly deputy directors of the SRA. Hindi nila ginawa. Ginawa po nilang sekreto. Tapos ginamit pa nila yung pangalan ng presidente, that is a usurpation of authority. Dinabas nila sa website. Signed, duly signed, and notarized. by these individuals.
Senate Committee on Agriculture Chairperson Senator Cynthia Villar is convinced that SRA officials should be blamed for the current situation of the country's sugar industry. She added that the sugar fiasco can be prevented and the country need not import sugar from other countries if Republic Act 10659 or Sugarcane Industry Development Act was properly implemented. The law was passed in 2015 and intends to strengthen and minimize sugar production costs, but the funds for this were kept by SRA at the Philippine International Trading Corporation or PITC.
Lahat underspending kaya binagsak ng DBM yung budget nyo Hindi nyo naman tinutulungan ng farmer. Parang ang ginagawa nyo lang, interesado kayo sa importation. Hindi nyo ginagawa yung trabaho nyo, natulungan nyo, i-develop ang ating mga farmers para nang sa ganon, ma-produce nila yung sugar at a lower price at a bigger quantity.
Subiri confirmed that Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez will attend next hearing to tackle other details of the sugar fiasco and how the government discovered sugar hoarded in various warehouses. But Senator Raffy Tulfo wants to invite Bureau of Customs officials to the hearing as he doubts that raids conducted by the agency in the warehouses were intended to divert the public's attention to smuggling and avoid the issue to find out who ordered Resign Agriculture Leocadio Sebastian to pursue the sugar importation. Mean Corvera reporting for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
As the Senate is set to continue its probe on the controversial sugar importation, Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez is expected to answer questions on his role in the botched importation. Eden Santos reports.
Executive Secretary Victor Rodriguez is not yet off the hook in the botched sugar importation controversy. The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee has yet to question Rodriguez in his role in the passage of Sugar Order Number 4, which Malacanang has declared illegal and unauthorized by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who concurrently heads the Department of Agriculture. At the committee hearing, inconsistencies were observed in the statements of Rodriguez. He happened to have knowledge of the importation of the 300,000 metric tons of sugar amid reports of supply shortage causing an increase in its prices. Rodriguez mentioned in the committee that on August 5, he received the draft sugar order from the Sugar Regulatory Administration, followed by a subsequent memorandum from Resigned Agriculture Under Secretary Leocadio Sebastian.
5 August, Friday, at around 2:55 p.m., my office received a draft sugar order from then SRA Administrator Serafica. And few hours thereafter, we received the recommendation, a memo. The recommendation.
The statement is in contrast to his earlier pronouncement that Sebastian and resigned SRA Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica informed him about the sugar order.
Through Yusek Leo Sebastian passed a resolution approving Sugar Order Number 4 without submitting to us the following: the import plan, which should be the precursor for any sugar order to be issued. No knowledge of the acting secretary, His Excellency Ferdinand Marcos Jr., and without even convening the SRA board.
Observers doubted if Rodriguez is playing innocent on the issue that caused the resignation of officials in the agriculture sector. A lawmaker said during the Senate probe that as Executive Secretary, Rodriguez should prioritize protecting President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. It was revealed during the hearing that he knew about the draft order, which Sebastian confirmed to went through consultation before being approved by all stakeholders. Rodriguez said he knew it but did not reply when Sebastian followed up on the matter.
I purposely did not answer him dahil wala pa pong tugon ang Pangulo sa tatlong bagay na ito.
a statement which again is in contrast to his earlier statement to the committee.
I confronted Yusek Leo Sebastian and asked him why he did such a thing behind the president's back, without the president's knowledge, and in an unfair and dishonorable way.
Eden Santos reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House of Representatives probe on the controversial Sugar Order Number 4 on the botched importation of 300,000 metric tons of sugar is now coming to light. Vic Sumintak has the details.
The House Committee on Agriculture and Food believes that the controversy behind the Sugar Order Number 4 issued by Sugar Regulatory Administration authorizing the importation of 300,000 metric tons of sugar is now being clarified. House Committee Chairman Congressman Mark Enverga said former Agriculture Undersecretary Leocadio Sebastian and former SRA Administrator Hermenegildo Serafica admitted that some procedural issues were not followed. Enverga said both Sebastian and Serafica stand by their position regarding the country's sugar importation. Enverga said that during the hearing of the committee, it shows that Sebastian did not understand President Marcos Jr., which caused him to sign the document. The lawmaker added that Serafica, for his part, admitted that they have conducted a referendum to pass the SO number 4, which was not approved by President Marcos. Vic Sumintak reporting for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Philippines will submit its response on the request of the International Criminal Court, or ICC, to reopen its investigation on the country's drug war cases. Instead of a comment, the Department of Justice said it would provide observations to ICC out of courtesy and not in compliance. Moira Encina reports.
The Philippines stands firm on its position to submit a comment requested by the International Criminal Court, or ICC, to reopen its investigation on the killings related to the war on drugs in the country. Justice Secretary Crispin Remulla said the Philippines is no longer a member of the ICC and the country's justice system is working.
We are not submitting anything as a matter of compliance. And we are not members of the ICC anymore. We have withdrawn from the Rome Statute. And that there is no compulsory process for them to go into the country and start investigating anything. We are currently investigating these crimes. Our judicial system is working.
But out of courtesy, Remulla said the Philippine government, through the Office of the Solicitor General, would provide the ICC information on what the government has been doing to investigate alleged abuses in the war on drugs. Remulla said the OJ has submitted to Solicitor General Manado Guevara the case records related to the drug war.
We are not complying with any demand because we are not under the ICC. We are doing this as a matter of committee to inform them that we are doing something about the problems that we are supposed to solve on our own.
ICC had earlier given the Philippines until September 8 to submit its observation on the drug war probe. The DOJ chief said ICC could only interfere in countries where the judicial system is not working and no existing rule of law.
And the ICC should only enter into countries where there is no existing judicial system. They have done that in Somalia, they have done that in Sudan, in countries with no rule of law. Hindi naman tayo ganon. We have an existing justice system.
Moira Encina reporting for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The House Committee on Trade and Industry has passed the proposed Internet Transactions Act. The committee approved the consolidated House bills and the committee report that would protect and ensure the data privacy of consumers, merchants, and sellers transacting on the Internet. House Committee Chairman Congressman Mario Vittorio Marino said 12 House bills were filed for the proposed Internet Transaction Act and was mentioned by President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in his State of the Nation Address, or SONA. Once enacted, An electronic or e-commerce bureau will be created to regulate internet transactions and prevent any kinds of fraud. The e-commerce bureau will be under the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, while the president would appoint its head. Coming right up, 52 people died as floods destroy thousands of homes in Sudan. Zelensky denies Russian accusations over Dugina death. And Thailand's court suspends Prime Minister Prayut from office. These and more news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Welcome sa aming bagong tahanan. Say hi, tayo.
Hi! Bossing Poleng, meron akong kwento.
Yes.
Yay! Story time!
Itago nyo na lang ako sa pangalang Jojo.
Jojo nga po pala. Boyfriend ko.
Good evening po. Ikaw!
Kuya ko nga dyan!
May bago tayong tambayan.
Dito lang sa Net 25. Panalo tayo pag together. Walang talo pag together. Let's get together sa Net 25.
Berlus. Titigan mo to, makakalimutan mo si Junjun.
Sino si Junjun?
Kita mo nakalimutan niya.
Susut ang bola, tatakbo, kukunin kung bilog o eke dun sa square. Kung sino ang unang makabuo ng line. 3-point!
Abangan nyo ang sabi or Showbiz Artista Blind Item! Dito lang sa Quezon City!
This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. At least 52 people are dead after torrential rains caused floods in Sudan's River Nile state. People there now are left to sift through the wreckage of the thousands of homes the floods destroyed. In inundated Makaylab village, some 400 kilometers north of the capital, Khartoum, residents lament the destruction the water left behind and express worry that the rains could just be the start of an even worse autumn to come. Residents of Makaylab recall how the very heavy floods instantly filled the streets of the neighborhood, the alleys and the houses. They fear there will be more rains, but no place to stay.
3 civilians were killed after Ukrainian security forces launched shelling in the Donetsk Republic. Local officials said Ukrainian forces fired more than 10 shells, destroying houses, infrastructure, and other properties in the area. Donetsk Republic head believes that the bombing uses NATO shells in the bombing. More details from Roman Kosarev of RT News.
Multiple areas in Donetsk have once again been struck by the artillery of the Ukrainian nationalist forces. Right now, we are right in the center of the city. This is the Central Hotel. This is where a lot of volunteers, journalists, and other people that come from Russia and other countries live while they're working in Donetsk. You can see the scale of destruction here. This car here is almost completely destroyed. Thankfully, there was no one in it when the shell fell right here. Now, we're also not very far from the administration of the head of the republic. It's very close to here. Once again, the shelling took place in multiple areas of Donetsk, and once again, right in the center of the city. That's rarely been hit by the Ukrainian nationalists. Unfortunately, it happened once again this Tuesday. According to local authorities, Ukrainian nationalists used high-caliber artillery, and in this case, they're talking about 155 millimeter NATO artillery.
Shells used a 155 millimeters caliber. It's a NATO type, so the West is directly involved in the destruction of residential areas in Donetsk. I believe that the criminal Ukrainian regime should get the punish it deserves.
At least 17 shells landed in the center of Donetsk, instantly killing civilians and causing damage to infrastructure, to people's houses, to cars. This is just one of the victims. His name is Rustem. We have blurred out this picture for you, but I can tell you that half of his head is gone. He's standing here at an intersection, probably waiting for people to cross when this shell landed and killed him instantly. In his car was his wife and his best friend. They're right here as well, and I spoke to them and they told me what happened.
Just in an instant, bang, and we ran out. I was sitting in the back with the dog. Lena was on the side, and Ruslan was killed. I ran out with the dog in my arms, blood all over the place. Lena screams, Ruslan was killed. Nothing is clear, complete chaos.
This is another area in central Donetsk where one of the Ukrainian shells struck. Take a look at this car. It's full of shrapnel. Thankfully, no one was in it at the time of the attack. But take a look at this building. The windows have been blown out, and one of the shells, according to local officials, had landed right into that building. This building opposite is also full of shrapnel. All the citizens, all the local residents are now out on the street trying to collect whatever is left of their belongings, and they're hoping that Ukrainian nationalists will not strike again, at least this Tuesday. Roman Kosarev, RT, Donetsk.
Hundreds have gathered to pay their respect to Russian journalist and political analyst Daria Dugina, killed in a terrorist attack. Russia believed that the security forces of Kyiv was behind the attack and even used her 12-year-old daughter to carry on the attack. Kyiv, on the other hand, denied any involvement in the attack. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin posthumously conferred with Dugina the Order of Courage. Let's hear more from Donald Corder of RT News.
We're here at the funeral of Daria Dugina, a 30-year-old journalist and political analyst who was tragically killed in a terrorist attack here in Moscow, Russia. It's been an extremely emotional event with hundreds of people, her friends and family, showing up in tears to pay their respects. We also heard from her father, Alexander Dugin, who said a few words, mainly focusing on her bright character and her deep love for her homeland. And based on what we heard from other people who were here, Daria's death was a great loss for many others as well.
She had no fear. In our last conversation, she told me, Dad, I feel like a hero and a warrior, and I don't want any other fate. I want to be with my people, with my country. I want to be on the side of the light. Her mother and I advised her to become a philosopher, and she did. She tried to move in that direction. She died for the people, for Russia. She lived in the name of victory and died in the name of victory. The biggest price she had to pay can only be justified by victory, our victory.
Vladimir Putin posthumously bestowed the Russian Order of Courage upon Daria, saying that the terrorist attack that took her life was a cruel and heinous crime. He also said that Daria had a true Russian heart and was a true patriot. Just a day before the funeral, Russia's Security Bureau released the conclusions of its investigation, which determined that Ukraine's security services carried out the attack. And we also heard from a representative of one of Russia's major political parties who laid the blame on the scourge of fascism.
Daria fought for the future of Russia, for the future of humanity. She fought against fascism. As our fathers and grandfathers said, the fascist must be destroyed in its lair. The lair is Kiev, and the contractor of the killing is located overseas. They will definitely stand before the court of the International Tribunal. They will be given a legal verdict, and the court of history is already being held.
One of the most shocking aspects of the FSB's report was that the suspected assailant apparently used her 12-year-old daughter to actually carry out this attack. And according to the ambassador of the Donetsk People's Republic, this would not be the first time that Kiev has used children to carry out criminal acts.
Daria visited the DPR very often, and even more often these last days. She was among the first to be in Mariupol, in Azovstal, spreading the truth that is so skillfully and persistently hidden. Daria didn't spare herself, but realized the huge risk. She was there with us in order to spread the truth around the world. And for this truth, Daria was killed. The Nazi Ukrainian regime was unnerved by the fact that Daria was there, at Azovstal, and she was a journalist. The fact that we have a different opinion, the fact that we are not like the Nazi Kiev regime, the fact that we stand up for our people and for our history, it infuriates them, and this is how they express their loss in front of us.
As of now, Kiev has flat out denied any involvement in this terrorist attack, saying that its security services were not behind it. And so we've also heard from the representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations calling for an independent investigation to establish the facts surrounding the murder of Daria Dugina. So we will have to see if that investigation will go through and what kind of other information can be yielded by it.
This is definitely not our responsibility, says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky at the Crimea Platform Conference.
Це точно не наша відповідальність, це не громадянка нашої держави. Нас вона не цікавить. І вона не знаходиться на території України, окупованої або тимчасово окупованої.
Zelensky's firm denial came after Moscow accused Ukrainian intelligence of being behind the car bomb that killed Daria Dugina, the daughter of an ultranationalist intellectual allied with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The bombing had apparently targeted Dugina's father, Alexander Dugin. Despite the FSB's investigations, Zelensky reiterated that Kyiv is not ready for a ceasefire, arguing that Russia is continuously making daily attacks, assaults, or offensives. He maintained that Moscow does not want any other negotiations.
Россия ежедневными атаками, прорывами, наступлениями или потом отступлениями, сопровождая все это кровавыми убийствами и насилием, говорит всем нам и вам, что они никакие переговоры не видят, кроме таких.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin warned it would show no mercy over the assassination of Daria Dugina.
ФСБ уже установила факты, которые сейчас расследуются. Расследование, надеюсь, будет быстро завершено. И по итогам этого расследования, конечно, организаторам, заказчикам, исполнителям не может быть никакой пощады.
Lavrov said that Daria's murder is a barbaric crime that can never be forgiven.
Turkey's leading business association said it received a letter from U.S. Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo warning of possible sanctions risks if its companies start relations with sanctioned Russian entities and individuals. In a press release, the Turkish Industry and Business Association said it had shared the letter with the Turkish Foreign Ministry, Finance Ministry, and Trade Ministry. Earlier, Adeyemo told Turkish Deputy Finance Minister Yunus Elitas that Russian entities and individuals were attempting to use Turkey to bypass Western sanctions imposed over Moscow's military operations in Ukraine. Adeyemo raised concerns with his Turkish counterpart, claiming Russians were using Turkey to evade sanctions put in place by the U.S. and 30 countries, in a rare public criticism of Turkey over possible sanctions evasion, according to the Wall Street Journal. However, Turkey's Treasury Ministry told Adimayo that no institutions or individuals are allowed to violate the sanctions. The news comes as Turkey doubled its imports of Russian oil this year. The two countries also agreed to set up a partial payment system for Russian gas in rubles. Turkey is one of several countries that have refused to agree to Western sanctions to isolate Moscow over its conflict with Ukraine.
Thailand's Constitutional Court suspended Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha from office while it considers a legal challenge that could see him thrown out months before an expected general election. The kingdom's 2017 constitution bars the prime minister from serving more than 8 years in total. And opposition parties say Prayut, who took power in a 2014 coup, has reached the limit. The court agreed unanimously to hear a case brought by opposition parties who argue that Prayut has reached the end of his 8-year term limit as prime minister. Judges also agreed by 5 votes to 4 to suspend Prayut from office until the case is decided. A caretaker will be appointed to lead the government, with current Deputy Prime Minister Prawit Wongsuwan among the favorite candidates tipped for the role. It is not the first time the Constitutional Court has played a role in Thai politics. It canceled the results of the general elections in 2006 and 2014.
President Tsai Ing-wen said that the Taiwanese people remained resolved to defend the island following China's huge military drills. Taiwan Army's tanks fire at mock enemy forces that were making a simulated beach landing at its frontline island of Penghu. Tensions in the Taiwan Strait have risen to their highest in years since Beijing staged unprecedented drills in retaliation for U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei earlier this month. Tsai made the remarks when meeting a visiting delegation of U.S. colors on the 64th anniversary of a Chinese artillery attack known as the 823 bombardment. Tsai said that the battle to protect their homeland showed the world that no threat of any kind could shake the Taiwanese people's resolve to defend their nation, not in the past, not now, and not in the future. Taiwan lives under constant threat of an invasion by China, which claims the self-ruled democracy as part of its territory to be seized one day by force if necessary. It also accused China of using the visit as an excuse to kickstart drills that could serve as rehearsal for an invasion.
Next up, CDC recommends Novavax COVID-19 vaccine for adolescents. France vaccinates 50,000 people against monkeypox. And Germany, Canada signed partnership on transatlantic hydrogen trade. Find out more when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Running a business is part and parcel of our daily lives, mula sa sari-sari store ng kapitbahay, sa motor supply shop sa kanto, sa mga nagtitinda ng masasarap na pagkain at marami pang iba. They are called micro, small, and medium enterprises, the backbone of many economies. Today, let us attempt to have a closer look on the path to digitization and digitalization of MSMEs, and let's learn on how it can flourish businesses with our guest, Arlene Martinez, the founding president of Asia Council for Small Business Philippine Chapter.
When you open up and embrace digital technology and you become present online. Ang pinaka-advantage po niyan is that hindi mo nilalagyan ng cap ang growth or revenue growth mo. Your potential to grow is not just 10-folds, 100-folds, but it can be 1,000-fold.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m.
This portion is brought to you by Source Alliance.
We now welcome you back with more of what's happening globally. In the United States, the Novavax COVID-19 vaccine has been approved to be used for adolescents. Rosel Feria tells us more.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, recommends Novavax's COVID-19 vaccine to be used as another primary series option for adolescents ages 12 through 17. This recommendation follows FDA's authorization to use the vaccine for this age group under emergency use. The CDC says available now, Novavax's COVID-19 vaccine is an important tool in the pandemic and provides a more familiar type of COVID-19 vaccine technology for adolescents. Having multiple types of vaccines offers more options and flexibility for the public, jurisdictions, and vaccine providers. The CDC says Novavax's COVID-19 vaccine packages harmless protein of the COVID-19 virus alongside another ingredient called an adjuvant that helps the immune system respond to the virus in the future. At present, for COVID-19 vaccines, categorized into 3 vaccine types, are authorized under the emergency use authorization by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. The mRNA vaccines, the protein subunit vaccine, and the adenovirus vector vaccine. The CDC says none of the currently FDA-approved or FDA-authorized COVID-19 vaccines are live virus vaccines. Rosel Feria, Washington, D.C., Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
French Health Minister Francois Braun visits a monkeypox vaccination center, the Seguid, a free information, screening, and diagnosis center in Montpellier. Braun announces that France has passed the milestone of 50,000 vaccinations against monkeypox. The health minister says the country's 188 inoculation centers are ready and have the capacity to vaccinate. He guarantees there are available slots to make appointments in all these vaccination centers and promises to respond to the demand of his fellow citizens who want the shot.
Canadian and German leaders sign a green hydrogen deal, laying a path for a transatlantic supply chain. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says it is the time to take advantage of Canada and Germany's place in the hydrogen technology trade.
The time to act is now, not only in order to reach our ambitious climate targets and secure our energy supply, but also in view of international competition. Canadian and German companies are well positioned in the hydrogen technology market, but producers from other countries, especially China, the US, are gaining more and more market shares by scaling up their production capacities. We believe that Atlantic Canada presents a huge opportunity for us, but also for Canada to contribute to a green energy transition. Canada is a close and like-minded partner in the energy transition. We have to talk about short-term constraints and LNG, but in the long run, the real potential lies in green hydrogen from the wind-rich, thinly populated Atlantic provinces.
The Canadian government has been reluctant to approve any new pipelines to transport oil and gas from western provinces to the East Coast, where it could be exported to Europe.
The United States and the United Nations announced financial and technical support for an official plan to raise human rights standards in the Colombian police. Colombian police has been questioned for its bloody repression of protests. Colombia's Undersecretary for International Narcotics Affairs, Todd Robinson, says the project will help police create bonds of trust with the communities they serve. Robinson says he hopes these efforts will be reflected in best international human rights practices by the entire Colombian police force. Director of the Colombian Police, Major General Henry Armando Sanabrillas, thanked the United States for its strategic accompaniment that has been fundamental for a new process of institutional transformation, especially focusing on the protection of human rights.
Iraqis fill water from tank trucks in the Al-Aghawat village west of the southern governorate of Diwania amid a lack of potable water or tap water. Drought hit hard as the flow of the Euphrates has dropped visibly in recent months, while scorching temperatures sometimes reach 50 degrees.
احنا نسترشد نقللها عندنا طرق نقللها بس يا اخي شو تقللها هو ذا الجو حار.
Iraq is known in Arabic as the land of the two rivers, but it has seen water levels in the once mighty Tigris and Euphrates plummet. The Euphrates, which passes through Diwania province, has visibly contracted in recent months, with some of the river's weaker branches drying up.
ثلث المناطق المساحة الديوانية تقريبا قاعد نعاني بها مشكلة عدم إيصال المياه، وأيضا قاعد نحاول جهد الإمكان معالجتها بالحوضيات.
More than 3,300 families across 10 provinces in the country's center and south were displaced due to climate factors as of March this year. A report said blaming water scarcity, high salinity, and poor water quality.
China's autumn harvest is under severe threat from high temperatures and drought. Authorities have warned, urging action to protect crops in the face of the country's hottest summer on record. The world's second largest economy has been hit by record temperatures, flash floods, and droughts this summer. Phenomena that scientists have warned are becoming more frequent and intense due to climate change. The Agriculture Ministry said southern China has recorded its longest sustained period of high temperatures and sparse rain since records began more than 60 years ago. 4 government departments issued a notice urging the conservation of every unit of water to protect crops. Temperatures as high as 45 degrees Celsius have led multiple Chinese provinces to impose power cuts. State media outlet China News Service also reported that searing heat is drying up the critical Yangtze River, with water flow on its main trunk about 50% lower than the average over the last 5 years.
Next up, drone transports human tissue between hospitals in Belgium. Cubans flock to buy foreign currency from the state. And China changes ending of Minions movie. More news when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Kayo ay may sumbong o reklamo na gusto po ninyong paaksyonan sa inyong lugar. Problema na nais niyo pong masolusyonan. Mag-text sa 0915-415-1035 o mag-email sa responde@net25.com. Pwede rin kayo magpadala ng mensahe sa ating Facebook page at Net25TV. Hintayin po namin ang inyong mensahe para agad na marespondihan. Mapapanood nyo kami sa mga sumusunod na mga channels. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Ito ang Responde, Mata ng Mamamayan.
Watch out for the new season of moments with Gladys Reyes Someru. Soon on Net25.
Panalo tayo pag together, walang talo pag together. Let's stand together sa Net25.
In Belgium, a drone transports human tissue from one hospital to another for the first time in Europe. 4 flights between the 2 hospitals in Antwerp have been used to test the possibility of using drones to transport tissue samples, blood, or medicines in the future. Helica's CEO Michael Scham says drone transport means a faster logistics system for hospitals, something that both doctors and patients will appreciate.
Is actually that within the medical budget, cost needs to be, let's say the budget needs to be applied in the most efficient way. And therefore, what is happening is hospitals are collaborating more and more. They're centralizing their very expensive medical technical, let's say, setup. And however, then you get a disconnect between the labs that used to be in each hospital from them being now centralized. But you need then, for the fast usage, you need a fast logistics system. And that's where the drones come in, because on average, we are quick, but also the variance around that average is smaller, meaning that you can...
Cubans line up in front of a currency exchange on the first day of foreign currency sales in Cuba after a year. The Central Bank of Cuba announces the sale of dollars and other foreign currency to the population, only 20 days after it authorized the purchase of these currencies. Cuba intends to rebuild a foreign exchange market in the country. Many say it is a very good opportunity, that it is something they have been waiting for. However, some say it will be so much easier if they could use the currency they are paid with and not have to pay for basic things in foreign currency.
The United Nations Economic Commission for the Region, or ECLAC, improved its growth forecast for Latin America to 2.7% from 1.8% previously estimated. This is despite a very complex scenario of deceleration and inflation, which will deepen in the second half of the year. ECLAC explained that the global scenario of low growth and rising prices, together with lower trade growth, the appreciation of the dollar, and the tightening of global financial conditions will negatively affect the countries of the region. The slowdown process began to be evident after the 6.5% growth registered in 2021, mostly driven by a strong recovery of services after the worst part of the COVID pandemic. But now the adverse international scenario is added with the war between Russia and Ukraine, a conflict that has generated a lower availability of food and increases in the price of energy that have increased the inflationary pressures that have been occurring as a result of the supply shocks generated by the pandemic, according to the ECLAC.
Ukrainian badminton player Maria Ulitina has been living in Hungary since Russia launched military operations in her country and says focusing on matches is really hard when you don't have a home. The world number 58 drove for 4 straight days to reach the Hungarian border when Russian missiles started firing over her home in the eastern Ukrainian city of Dnipro in February. 6 months later, she is still living in exile and said the situation is now taking a serious toll on her mental health. During the Badminton World Championships in Tokyo, the 30-year-old Ulitina said she doesn't want to complain, but she is mentally and financially affected, knowing she doesn't know where she will live tomorrow. With her good training condition and standard of living, Ulitina admitted that her mental health is still hard to manage as the conflict in Ukraine draws her near to her family. Ulitina has been active on the world tour this season, and she made a surprise appearance at the All England Open in March, barely a week after fleeing Ukraine for Hungary.
Nearly 10 million viewers in the United States watched the eagerly awaited first episode of The House of Dragon, the first spin-off to Game of Thrones, making it HBO's most successful series launch, according to Warner Media. Set years earlier in the same universe of George R.R. Martin's fantasy books, House of the Dragon depicts the glory days of the ancestors of popular Thrones characters such as Daenerys Targaryen. Warner Media said the show's premiere drew 9.98 million viewers in the United States across HBO's platform, making it the largest audience for any new original series in the history of HBO. Moreover, the U.S. entertainment giant said Game of Thrones was also the largest series launch on HBO Max, its streaming platform, in the United States, Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. The series has 9 episodes and features Paddy Considine as the kindly King Viserys and Matt Smith as his ambitious brother, Prince Daemon. The HBO show's popularity will likely be measured against The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, adapted by Amazon Prime Video.
Local viewers were shocked to discover that the latest prequel, Minions: The Rise of Gru, had an alternate movie ending in China. Warning, plot spoilers ahead. Minions: The Rise of Gru movie follows anti-hero Gru in his teenage years and sets up his evolution into a supervillain later in the series. However, unlike the original movie, the Chinese version does not end with Gru and his mentor Wild Knuckles riding off into the sunset. Instead, Wild Knuckles is jailed while Gru becomes one of the good guys. Nevertheless, the flick went on to find success at the box office, reportedly grossing a pandemic record of about $3.2 million in its opening day in China. This is also not the first time a popular foreign film had its ending altered for China. Earlier this year, a version of the 1999 American film Fight Club, released on Chinese streaming platform Tencent Video, had its original ending removed and replaced with a message saying that authorities had won and saved the day.
And now let's take a look back on some historical events that happened on this day, August 24. In the year 79, Mount Vesuvius in Italy erupted, destroying the ancient cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. And the excavations of these sites in the mid-18th century precipitated the modern science of archaeology. In 1891, Thomas Edison receives a patent for his movie camera, the kinetograph. And in 1981, Mark David Chapman is sentenced to 20 years to life for the murder of John Lennon, a founding member of the Beatles, one of the most successful bands in the history of popular music.
And to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Muhammad Ali, an American professional boxer. Don't count the days, make the days count.
Something to think about.
Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity, that's right. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I'm CJ Hero.
And I'm Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.